A locked front door, a parked Porsche sitting untouched in the driveway, cash left sitting on the counter, right where anyone could grab it. Nothing was stolen from this house that night. Only a man's life. Hudson, Ohio is the kind of town where nothing happens. Tree-lined streets, good schools, neighbors who know each other on sight, which is exactly why what happened inside one home on West Streetsboro Street doesn't add up at first glance. No forced entry from the outside, no missing valuables, just a body on the kitchen floor, a broken door frame lying in the grass, and a set of bloody footprints walking calmly away from the scene. By the time investigators finished tracing the phone records, the payment app transactions, and one very specific pair of sneakers, they'd built one of the tightest digital cases the county had ever seen. This is Buried Truth Crime, and this is the story of how a professor's final, silent call for help ended up solving his own murder. If you're new here, this channel builds every case from court documents and verified reporting, not speculation. Hit like right now if that's what you came for, and subscribe so the next investigation lands in your feed. Let's get into it. It's the evening of the 19th of April, 2023. Two Hudson police officers, Peggy and Bowen, are dispatched to a large home on West Streetsboro Street. On paper, it's routine. A father never showed up to collect his 5-year-old daughter from school that day, and now he isn't answering his phone. Family members are worried. It's the kind of call officers handle constantly, and most of the time, it ends with someone simply forgetting their phone was on silent. This one doesn't. The officers pull into the driveway of a well-kept property in one of Hudson's more upscale neighborhoods. A black Porsche sits parked out front. The house looks completely normal from the street. Every window shut, the front door locked tight. They walk the perimeter, checking for anything out of place. Around the back of the house, they find it. The rear door isn't just unlocked. It's been forced open from the inside, hard enough to rip part of the door frame away from the wall. Splintered wood lies scattered several feet into the yard. Someone didn't sneak out quietly. Someone fought their way out. Looking through a side window, the officers see him, a man lying motionless on the kitchen floor in a bathrobe, surrounded by blood. There's no sign of movement. Their first assumption is the obvious one, a burglary that turned violent. But that theory falls apart within minutes. The keys to the Porsche are sitting in plain view near the front entrance. Laptops and tablets are untouched. Cash is still sitting out in the open. Whoever was in this house wasn't interested in stealing anything. Instead, what the officers find as they move through the home paints a very different picture. The upstairs is in disarray. Personal items scattered, bottles left out, and clear signs that more than one person had spent the night there. In a closet hidden beneath folded clothes, they find an entire collection of firearms, expensive handguns and a hunting shotgun, all registered to the homeowner. On a nightstand sitting beneath a child's superhero mask are a handful of loose bullets. But none of those guns had been fired. Ballistics testing would later confirm every single weapon in that house was untouched. Whatever gun was used that morning left with whoever pulled the trigger. One more thing is missing entirely: the homeowner's cell phone. It's nowhere in the house, and it will never be powered back on again. Back in the kitchen, crime scene technicians find something else. Scattered across the blood-stained floor are 8 spent shell casings, standard 9mm rounds, and running straight through the center of the scene, tracked in blood, is a single distinct set of sneaker prints. Nike Air Force Ones, walking out through that broken back door as though whoever wore them had all the time in the world. A locked front door, an untouched Porsche, cash left behind, a back door broken from the inside, and a stranger's shoe prints in blood, heading for the exit. Investigators had a body, a broken door, and a trail of evidence. What they didn't have yet was a name. The man on the kitchen floor is 41-year-old Todd Morgan, an assistant professor in the Department of Management at Cleveland State University's College of Business. To colleagues and students, Todd was exactly what you'd expect from someone with his resume: organized, reserved, and exceptionally good with numbers. His academic path was a long one: a bachelor's degree, then a master's, and finally a doctorate completed at Kent State University. Before settling back in Ohio in 2021, he'd taught at universities in 2 other states. On paper, his life read like a success story: a stable career, a home in a desirable Hudson neighborhood, and 2 children he clearly loved: a 10-year-old son from his first marriage and a young daughter from a later relationship. But the picture wasn't as simple as it looked from the outside. Todd's first marriage had ended, and by every account, alcohol had become a serious, ongoing struggle in his life. Serious enough that it followed him directly into family court. The custody arrangement for his daughter came with an unusually strict condition. Before every visit, Todd had to prove, through a portable breath-testing device connected to an app, that he was completely sober. The results were sent automatically to his daughter's mother. Only a reading of 0 would clear him to spend time with his little girl. By every account from people close to him, Todd took that requirement seriously, no matter how uncomfortable it was. He wanted to remain a present, reliable father, and he was willing to prove it over and over on demand. It's a detail that says a lot about who he actually was behind the professional exterior. A man dealing with a private battle that almost nobody around him fully understood. On the night before he died, Todd completed that sobriety check exactly as required. The reading came back at 0. He'd been cleared for his scheduled time with his daughter. Whatever happened next, it happened to a man who, that night, had done exactly what the court asked of him. About 20 miles away, in Akron, Ohio, is 31-year-old Terriona Pascal. Her life looked nothing like Todd's. Public records and later reporting describe her income as coming largely through paid meetings arranged online, connecting with clients through a dating app, and driving to them herself in a silver Ford SUV. It was a business built on brief transactional visits, arranged quietly and privately. Two people, two completely different worlds, living 20 miles apart and moving in circles that would never normally intersect. But a single match on a dating app was enough to bring them together and set in motion a chain of events that would end with one of them dead and the other behind bars for most of the rest of her adult life. According to investigators, the two connected online just 3 days before that April morning. The conversation was brief and businesslike. Terms were discussed. A late-night visit was arranged for the evening of the 18th of April. That night, after completing his court-ordered sobriety check, Todd was cleared for his parenting time the following day. Shortly before midnight, a silver Ford SUV pulled quietly into his driveway. What happened inside that house over the next several hours was never witnessed by anyone outside it. But the digital trail left behind gives investigators an almost minute-by-minute account of how the night unraveled. At around 7 in the morning, a payment goes out from Todd's phone through a cash payment app. A small amount, far less than what would typically be expected for services like these. It's the kind of number that stands out immediately to anyone who's worked cases like this before. A small, almost dismissive payment can be the spark that turns a business transaction into something else entirely. For the next 20 minutes or so, the digital trail goes quiet. No messages, no further transactions. Then, at 7:21 in the morning, dispatchers receive an unusual call. It's an automated emergency alert, the kind a modern smartphone sends out when its side button is pressed rapidly several times in a row. There's no voice on the line, no sound of a struggle, just silence. A callback goes unanswered, and for the moment, the call is logged as a possible accidental activation. 2 minutes later, at 7:23, records show an attempt to transfer a much larger sum, $1,000, out of Todd's account. The bank's fraud protection system flags it immediately and blocks the transfer before it can go through. Right after that failed attempt, location data shows Todd's phone moving rapidly away from the house. At the exact same time, records show a second phone, the one that had triggered that automated emergency alert, traveling the same route at virtually the same speed. Then Todd's phone goes dark. It is never turned back on. Investigators now had an almost perfect digital timeline. A small payment, a blocked large one, a silent emergency call, and 2 phones leaving the scene together. What they didn't have yet was a face to match the second number. If you've never seen an automated SOS alert used as a piece of evidence in a real case, that's exactly the kind of detail we like to dig into on this channel. Drop a comment if you want to see more digital forensics breakdowns like this one, and make sure you're subscribed, because this case is about to move fast. To understand what really happened that morning, investigators had to go back 12 hours before officers were ever called to the scene. To 7:20 that same morning, when a married couple living nearby, Eugene and Sherry, told police they heard something unusual. A rapid series of loud bangs. Eugene would later estimate 6 or 7 distinct shots, close together. Curious, the couple moved to their windows to look outside. The first thing that caught their attention was an unfamiliar vehicle parked in Todd's driveway, a silver Ford SUV, in place of the sports car they were used to seeing there. From that distance, they couldn't make out a face, but they were certain of one detail: long, shoulder-length hair. According to both witnesses, that person suddenly burst out through the broken back door, sprinted to the SUV, grabbed something from inside, and ran back into the house. A couple of minutes later, the same figure came back outside, this time moving differently, frantic, hurried, visibly shaken. They got behind the wheel of the SUV and drove off, leaving the quiet neighborhood behind. It was broad daylight on a residential street where neighbors know each other by sight, and someone was running back and forth between a damaged doorway and a getaway vehicle just moments after a string of gunshots. Whatever composure that person had walked in with, it was completely gone by the time they left. With Eugene and Sherry's account lining up almost exactly with the timing of that automated emergency call, investigators moved fast. An emergency request to telecommunications providers connected the number behind that silent SOS alert to cell tower activity from that morning and gave them a name: Terrayona Pascal. An alert went out for her and her vehicle immediately. Cell tower data showed her phone traveling north on the interstate at highway speed within minutes of the shooting, heading straight toward Akron. The trail led investigators to an apartment complex tied to her family. In the parking lot, they spotted exactly what they were looking for: a silver Ford SUV, its rear license plate already removed. A tactical team moved in, detained Pascal without incident, and brought her in for questioning. Inside the SUV's trunk, crime scene technicians recovered a 9mm handgun. It was rushed straight to the crime lab, where it was compared against the shell casings pulled from Todd's kitchen floor. The result came back a perfect match. But what investigators learned next was the kind of detail that makes even seasoned detectives stop and think. That same handgun was already sitting in law enforcement's database, linked to an unsolved shooting death in Cleveland from nearly 2 years earlier. And in a detail that's genuinely hard to believe, Pascal had already been brought in and questioned about that earlier case just days before this one. At the time, there hadn't been enough evidence to hold her, and she'd walked free, still carrying the same gun in her vehicle. This time, investigators were determined not to let anything slip through. Cyber investigators pulled Pascal's social media accounts and quickly found recent photos of her wearing the exact style of sneaker that had left bloody prints leading out of Todd's back door. The digital evidence only got stronger from there. Investigators discovered she'd wiped her old phone and bought a new one, apparently believing that would erase any trace of what had happened. It didn't. Cloud backups had preserved nearly everything, including a very specific search history. Questions about how to avoid being tracked by police followed later by searches for news coverage about the case itself. Investigators documented dozens of searches for her own name tied to the events on West Streetsboro Street, made well before her identity had ever been made public. Physical evidence recovered from the home was tested and matched back to her as well, adding a biological layer to the digital and physical case already forming. By the time all of it came together, the ballistics match, the cell tower data, the eyewitness account, the search history, and the physical evidence, prosecutors had built a case with almost no room for a credible defense. The Summit County Medical Examiner's Office ruled Todd's death a homicide, caused by multiple gunshot wounds to the head and torso. Investigators would later confirm he was struck several times, with the fatal injuries causing catastrophic internal damage that made survival virtually impossible within minutes. That automated emergency alert, triggered in the middle of it all, was almost certainly the last thing Todd was physically able to do, a final, instinctive reach for help as his body was shutting down. By September of 2024, the case had reached the Summit County Courthouse, and the evidence against Pascal was overwhelming. Cell tower data established an exact timeline. Physical evidence tied her to the scene. Ballistics connected the recovered handgun directly to the shell casings from Todd's kitchen. Facing all of it, the defense chose not to fight for an acquittal. Pascal pleaded guilty to aggravated murder with a firearm specification, avoiding a trial entirely. The judge sentenced her to 23 years to life in prison. In the courtroom, Todd's mother addressed her directly, describing her son as a devoted father who was doing everything he could to rebuild his life for the sake of his children. She didn't hide the fact that Todd had struggled with alcohol for years. Instead, she made the point that despite that struggle, he'd shown up, again and again, for every court-ordered test, every requirement, every uncomfortable proof of sobriety, because being present for his kids mattered more to him than his own pride. When given the chance to speak, Pascal offered a brief apology to Todd's family. Todd Morgan spent years building a career, working quietly through one of the hardest chapters of his personal life, and doing exactly what the court asked of him just to remain part of his children's world. None of that mattered against a single decision made by someone he had met only 3 days earlier, through a dating app match that should have meant nothing. That's the part of this case that stays with you. How thin the line really is between an ordinary night and the last one. A home in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood, a locked front door, and a story that ended not with a break-in, but with an invitation. If this case hit you the way it hit us putting it together, take a second to like this video, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Buried Truth Crime so the next investigation lands right in your feed. We'll see you in the next one.